episode of The Mortician and the Veterinarian / Derek and Heather / couple in the car. No, maybe we should be the couple in the car. So we don't normally start our vlog until we go to Starbucks, because we go to Starbucks a lot. Because it is what it is when you're chronically ill. Sometimes you don't make breakfast / all the time. And we just went through Starbucks, and the lady asked us if we were the super nice couple.
The cool couple is how she put it.
The cool couple. The cool couple in the car, even better. So I guess that's us. The cool couple in the car.
Well, Heather's always so nice to everybody that she gets remembered as being that really nice, pretty lady.
It's probably the hair.
It's there.
Alright, today we are talking about time travel. We talked about time travel before, but then we lost it. We lost all of the footage into the ether.
Sorry about that. We're making up for it now.
There's a lot to talk about when it comes to time travel.
I agree.
It's kind of a big, heavy topic.
Well, yeah. Do we want to talk about, do we rehash what we did before a little bit, and that'll get us jogged and started?
I can't remember anything we talked about before, so yes.
So, it's kind of like, no, not really. Well, alright, actually, no, let's start time travel. We watched Back to the Future.
Yes, we
last
did.
night.
We did. Which I had not seen since 3rd grade, and I hadn't really remembered a whole lot except for electricity striking the clock tower. I wasn't expecting it to be as science fiction-y as it was. Like, the Libyan terrorists showing up, that was straight out of a Kurt Vonnegut novel. I mean, that was really unexpected.
Kurt Vonnegut?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he writes about time travel all the time.
With Libyans?
With Kurt Vonnegut, it can be pretty much anything.
Okay.
He's an interesting character.
Okay.
And his characters are interesting characters.
So, yeah, I am always impressed when I watch that movie. I watch it about every 5 years or so, how well it holds up. And part of why that is, I guess, I watched a documentary about it recently. The guy who did all the special effects was talking about how nearly all the special effects, with the exception of like 3 or 4, were practical effects rather than CGI, and so there's no reason for the CGI to look terrible.
And as we all know, before George Lucas shot himself in the foot in the original trilogy, that practical effects are the way to do special effects.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're much cooler.
Like Inception. You know, most of the effects in Inception were practical.
No, I actually had no idea.
Have you seen that movie?
I have.
Yeah.
I saw it in theaters, actually.
Remember the room spinning?
Yes, I knew that
Yeah, that was
was
an actual
practical.
room spinning.
It just, wasn't it like In Sync who did a video that was really similar to that?
They did one of the boy bands, and they were walking around.
Please forgive me if you're a huge Backstreet Boys fan, and that was actually a Backstreet Boys thing.
There was also a scene like that in that movie from the 90s, 80s. It was about dance, and this guy has an apartment that he dances all the way around.
Oh, I remember that. I can't remember. I want to say 80s.
Yeah, it's 80s. It's 80s.
Alright, so time travel. Boy. Again, there's a lot to unpack about time travel. If you were going to time travel, where would you time travel to? I think that's the first and foremost, most important question.
I would probably time travel to...
Wait, let's do this one of 2 ways.
Okay.
Let's do where would you go in the past, and where would you go in the future?
Okay, so that's a good question. So I was actually going to start with just, would you rather go to the past or the future?
But if I can time travel, don't I have the option to do both?
Yes, but...
Like, do we have a limited amount of plutonium and I can only make one trip?
What was it? One sample, one trip?
Something like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, no, you can, we'll talk about, like, all the different options, but which would you prefer? Like, right off the bat, if you had to choose.
Future.
Yeah.
Definitely the future.
Why the future?
Because I'm a woman and going to the past is, like, universally a bad idea when you're a woman.
I kind of agree with Louis C.K. on the fact that it's probably universally a bad idea for me to go to the, like, too far into the future. Because I'm going to be, like, I'm white dudes are going to get our comeuppance.
White dudes probably won't get their comeuppance, yes.
I mean, I guess what that question comes down to is, do you want to go experience something that is known and you want to know more about it? Or do you want to go experience something that is unknown?
I think the unknown sounds way more exciting. And
Me
I
too.
mean, to a certain extent, depending on where you go in the past, there's only going to be so much about it that is known.
Huh.
So,
I mean, it would be really cool to go back and see what's different than the history books and all that stuff. But at the same time, you know, there's not a lot of those things where, I don't know, I'm so much more interested in finding out what's going to happen rather than going, okay, I can check that off my list now. I understand that one thing better.
yeah, I mean, I hear you, but there is such a huge part of me that, like, desperately wants to go watch a mummification. Like, so badly. It would be so cool to be able to see an ancient Egyptian death ritual from start to finish. And as long as I wasn't...
I would love to see the guys doing it who are, like, taking their breaks, and they're, like...
What they're talking about in their breaks.
You know, drinking their beer, and they're like, oh, this fucking asshole. These rich people, and their money, and we gotta go bomb.
This pharaoh showed up at the last minute. They think that they're the only people that we're taking care of. I mean, there's so many other services going on right now. You can't just walk in and expect somebody to take care of you. It doesn't matter if you're a pharaoh or not. That's just not how it works.
It's not the assembly line that it is for you, sweetheart.
Oh, it would be cool. But the future.
Well,
Okay.
so then my other question, though, I mean, not to go too far into what are the rules of this, but, you know, even if we went back in time, you would have difficulty getting into that room because... A, being a woman, B, being, you know, tattooed, you know what I mean? Like, how do you get yourself access to the things that we would want to see?
Oh god, I didn't even think about my tattoos limiting me. That's like the saddest thing ever. I mean, it's accurate.
Honestly, I don't know if it would limit you. I think you coming in with the hair and the tattoos and everything, you would be either...
worshipped or killed immediately. Although, maybe the tattoos wouldn't limit me. I mean, they have shown tattoos on Egyptians.
Yeah, no, but I just mean more out of being a curiosity, not necessarily being judged or anything like that.
Well, I think I would definitely be a curiosity. If only for the lisp.
The lisp?
Yeah, my lisp.
Oh, that's right. You don't think anybody lisps?
Maybe? I don't know, but you think a lisp sounded like an ancient Egyptian?
Same.
Or the language that they speak that I can't currently remember the name of.
Are there very many S sounds in, not Arabic,
Aramaic? No, that's Jesus. I can't remember.
yeah, me neither.
So, what about the future, though? Are we going into, like, a future of her, or are we going to, like, way future?
So now it's me. I don't get to say what I was going to do.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Forgive me.
Always. I don't know. I think there's no time in the past that, like, really just jumps out at me that I would absolutely positively want to visit. There's a whole bunch of them that I think would be really interesting and that I would love to. But yeah, I don't have one specific event or type of thing that I'd like to see.
Alright, well, give us a couple of the places in the past that you think would be interesting.
I would love to go back to the Victorian era.
Just you and the laudanum. You're really on the laudanum.
Yeah. The laudanum would be great if everybody... Because...
We read... did we read that somewhere, or did we... Where did we read that about the laudanum? That everyone was just...
I don't remember, but it was like at least half the people, if not more, had a serious laudanum habit. And so I think that it'd be really interesting to be in a world where everybody, top to bottom, all classes of society are just loaded all the time.
You know, it's just
Making
an aside
decisions,
question.
making laws. What did that do to...
Total aside question. Up until fairly recently, I mean, that's how American society was. We drank all the time. I mean, look at Mad Men for that. Do you think that part of the problem with our society today is that we're not loaded all the time? And so like
Clear-headed.
We're clear-headed and we're having issues because of the fact that we're clear-headed.
And we're dealing with all of the norms and legislation and everything of drunk people.
Well, I mean that too, but I just mean maybe we're not getting along as well because we're not all.
Oh, I see. We'd be more harmonious.
Yeah.
I think that depends on how drunk people were. I guess probably because a lot of people are more harmonious when they're tipsy.
Yeah.
And most people aren't drunk, like at work and stuff. Interesting.
Just a thought. Maybe our sobriety is what's ruining us right now. All right, so Victorian area.
So wait, no, let's start an anti-temperance movement. let's start a movement of let's get drunk half the time.
We are
pro-imbibing.
We're pro anti-prohibition.
So we're into inhibition.
We're into being inhibited. We're pro-inhibition.
Uninhibited.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Doesn't inhibited sound like it should be loaded?
Interestingly, yeah, I get what you're going for there.
Versus uninhibited.
But I mean, yeah.
We're uninhibited because we're inhibited.
Well,
Anyways,
so
I can't say that word anymore because it sounds ridiculous. Inhibited.
In is not a prefix though in that word.
Right.
So it would be.
What is the official definition of inhibited?
Constrained.
Okay, well that's not the official definition unless we're talking about the dictionary of Derek.
I'm confused. What?
I meant like Oxford.
Yeah.
Or Merriam-Webster.
Right.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I like your single word response.
I went looking for my phone.
Which we're recording with. Not gonna work.
All right.
Okay, so Victorian era, and then what else? Or where else?
Nowhere in the Middle Ages.
Really?
Yeah, no.
Just too awful.
Too much risk of disease.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, like basically anything before penicillin, as Woody Allen would say, is a bad idea. But yeah, it just I don't know. It's not all that interesting to me.
Okay.
I'm not a big battle buff, so I don't want to go like watch a bunch of people slaughter each other.
Although again, I do think it would be really interesting as part of the American Civil War to go to the embalming corps because that is when America picked up embalming as like the go-to thing because we were trying to get people who were fighting in this war back home and the bodies had to be preserved in order to do that.
Gotcha.
So that would be kind of interesting. In an awful way.
Yeah.
I like how the majority of mine end up revolving around dead things.
Yeah, and I mean, as you're talking, I think that I would really enjoy going somewhere where I could experience different points in medicine.
Yeah, that would be pretty
I'm
cool.
really fascinated by the evolution of that. See what things, but that's the thing is like a lot of that is just based on what we know, and so I would want to go back and visit those things. But as we're finding, there are a lot of techniques that we're revisiting and stuff that most people weren't talking about for a long time, and so.
Are there any like famous veterinarians you'd want to go hang out with for a little while?
Not particularly. Most of them were just really stiff, really arrogant and elitist men.
What about the guy who wrote All Creatures Great and Small?
James Herriot?
Yeah.
I think that'd be kind of interesting. I mean, considering that it's all made up, I would love to see what he's actually like in real life.
Wait, his stories are all made up?
They're fiction.
No.
Yeah.
I don't believe you. I staunchly am erasing this conversation from my memory.
Yeah, it's unfortunately something that it's something that every veterinary student has to come to terms with.
No.
Yeah.
Oh no. I'm
sure that they're based in reality, like, you know, the kind of stories that I'm going to be writing over time, but they're fictionalized.
Okay, but fictionalized and fiction. Those are... I can handle fictionalized.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm pretty sure that he actually was a veterinarian. I mean, I'm sure that
he was eventually.
I'm sure that he had experiences that he then turned into stories, but
okay.
it wasn't reportage.
That I can deal with. That's what I thought. So you haven't like ultimately changed my world or anything.
No. So like for example, I love the history of veterinary medicine and stuff, but I don't know if there are people that I would necessarily want to meet. So for example, at Cornell, they had the guy who ran the vet school was James Law, and he only graduated 4 veterinarians in 26 years, for the first 26 years in the veterinary school. So it was basically an apprenticeship, and he was just hoarding all the information for himself and his sort of like grad students, essentially.
That seems atrocious.
But interestingly, one of them was... was it salmon? Like, is it salmonella?
Oh, I don't know.
I can't remember if that guy was like more in the 20th century. But in any case, it was somebody really famous that went on to be like enormous. And James Law carried so much weight in veterinary medicine that back in the late 1800s, there was a flu that killed off 25% of the horses in the United States.
That's a lot of horses.
It's a lot. And considering what kind of work horses did,
everything,
that would be like taking away 25% of all of the cars, trucks, and heavy equipment in the entire country over like one summer.
I'm not sure we'd be able to function.
No, we wouldn't, and they didn't. And it was one of the biggest economic disasters of the 19th century. And he was the guy who was in charge of figuring out how to solve it.
And did he?
He did.
How?
I don't remember.
Damn.
Yeah.
We'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, figured it out. I'm sorry. Part of that also was that they developed... Part of what grew out of that was that they created the... it's one of the federal agencies, and it's a big one. I don't know if it's...
The EPA.
I don't think it's the EPA. It might be the FDA or something else. I'm gonna bone up. I'm gonna tell you guys about this. I'm sorry. Anyway, they created it out of whole cloth because he was like, oh, we'll put this guy in charge of it, and that's how we're gonna fix this problem.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so he installed his own student as the first. Yeah, I don't remember.
Like the head of whatever the agency was.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like we've got the past pretty covered.
Sorry. Yes.
No, don't be. Future.
Future. I don't know, man. I'd love to go. I would want to be around right at the singularity, right when.
Well, that's too far in the future for me.
And it's going to be during our lifetimes, though.
Well, what are you defining as the singularity?
So there's 2 moments I think that are going to be really key. One is when we create artificial intelligence that is as intelligent or more intelligent than us.
Okay.
And then 2 is when we're able to transmit our consciousness into a piece of technology.
So I think that we'll accomplish AI in our lifetime. I am not sure that we will accomplish the ability to transmit what makes us into something else.
Which sucks because... Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we don't have an understanding of what the soul is and what it is that makes humans humans.
Do you think it's a soul?
I do think it's a soul.
Okay.
But I think it's whatever a soul is, like this concept of humanity and that spark of life that exists that makes someone into a person.
Uh-huh.
I think that is what we spark of humanity that we haven't quite figured out what it is, or how to define it, or how to model it, or how to recreate it.
Do you think that it's a spark of humanity, or do you think it's just the spark of life that other creatures have the same version of?
I think that in all ways, creatures do have something similar, but I think that, I don't know, that's a good question.
Are you about to admit that you believe in human exceptionalism?
No, actually, that's why I stopped myself, because I don't believe in human exceptionalism at all. And so maybe that word of soul is applicable and definable for animals as well.
Okay.
Because human exceptionalism is not at all. I mean, I don't think that I could treat my dogs the way that I do and believe in human exceptionalism. Because I basically treat them like they're humans.
Well, I mean, except we create them and we, feed them on as much our schedule as their schedule and all that sort of stuff. That's not something that you would do with a child.
Although, if they had the ability to communicate to me that, I'm hungry now, then I would go ahead and feed them when they were hungry, as long as it didn't make them morbidly obese.
Right.
But I think that's more a lack of ability to communicate more clearly with them than anything else.
And do you think that that's them being incapable, or that's us us being incapable, or us not taking the time and effort and all that?
I think there's always an inherent level of incapability. We speak different languages. I think that you can speak that language to the best of your extent, but I think that if there's no way for them to eventually speak a version of English and us to speak a version of canine, like, you're never going to get that moment of total pure, okay, I know that this means this in this language and this means this. Like, it's a guess up to that point.
Yeah.
I'm doing the best that I can to guess that this is what this means, or that this is what that you're trying to communicate is.
It's funny, as you're talking, I'm thinking back on some of our early arguments about what language even is. And whether what's important is the message sent, or the message received, or some third version of it, which is the actual message. But that's a different conversation than time travel.
Yes.
So, I am wondering, I get what you're saying, and the other thing about it is, even just from a practical standpoint, even if we do get to a point where we could do something where we put a version of our intelligence into a machine, would that be the same intelligence? Like, would we literally flow from one to another? Or would there be a new, like a clone, essentially?
Yeah, is it like...
where that one now exists and contains my old memories and everything, but I still have to die.
When you upload...
And I still stop.
When you upload yourself to the cloud, is it you, or is it just a copy of you?
Yeah, and so, like, going into a transporter, in Star Trek.
I don't know, it's a bizarre...
Because that would suck. I'm also... It would really suck if... Because I think that possibility is closer than you do. And even if it's not in our lifetime, it's going to be very soon after our lifetime. And I would just hate to be one of the last couple of generations that had to die.
Oh no.
That would be the worst.
We suffer from way too much classism, but it's going to be so expensive that...
Initially.
I don't think there's an initial at all.
I think they're just going to hoard it.
Yeah, I think that we inherently suffer from classism and speciesism, and so there's going to be some level of difficulty to obtaining that particular level of immortality.
Interesting. Great point. Ugh.
I mean, unless we manage to get to some...
Alright, well in that case, I just want to go as far forward as I can and see lasers.
But we have lasers now.
Yeah, but like... I don't know. Something makes me think less hard and feel less about humanity.
So you want Death Stars?
I don't want them, but I think it'd be badass to see them.
I don't want them, I'm just not against them.
I'm a little boy at heart, and I love cool weapons.
Fair. I wonder how much of that has to do with our government and the decisions that we make. Yeah, blow it up. That sounds awesome.
In terms of why I like it.
Just people being little boys at heart or little girls at heart.
Oh, it's a huge amount. Huge amount of it.
Just blow it up. I think that'd be cool. The 8-year-old in me wants that to happen.
Well, and even just like your sense of justice. Like, people get really upset about rioting. So in the book I was just reading, The Given Day, you know, Boston is rioting, and one of the primary characters gets really upset, and he's like, these people are animals and this and that, but then they decide that they're going to go break the rioting, and so he's like, sweet, I get to hit people and shoot people, this is awesome. And he goes out and he gets really excited about it, and he just thrives on it, and he and his buddies are like, this is just like the good old days, I feel 25 again. And it's the exact same impulse. They want to destroy, they want to harm, they want to do all that stuff, but they want to do it in a way that is, you know, that they get permission to do it.
I can honestly say that is not an impulse that I suffer from on a regular basis. In fact, that impulse just makes me feel sad and guilty and terrible.
That doesn't mean you don't. So you're saying you don't have it, and when you do have it, you feel those ways about it?
Yeah. Like, I can't even kill bugs.
We're behind a boat called The Real Obsession. REEL Obsession. I love that boats, more than anything else, have puns as names so often.
My last name is Ratcliffe, and I grew up in Florida, so we suffer severely from boat puns. And so our boat growing up is called the Rat Pack, which I always thought was pretty solid. The Rat Pack.
Was it a rat-infested sea vessel?
No, it was after a singer.
The singer?
Yes, and all of his, oh my god. Fly me to the moon.
There was more than one singer in the Rat Pack.
Yeah, but I mean the idea of the Rat Pack. Can't believe you just made me sing on camera. You're such a jerk.
I don't know who you're talking about.
No, yes you do.
What else does he sing?
No, I'm not singing anymore.
Tell me.
No.
Sammy Davis Jr., Old Blue Eyes. Come on, Frank Sinatra.
There we go. That was who
Dean
I
Martin?
couldn't think of. I think Dean Martin was part of it.
Yeah. Wasn't?
Maybe Dean Martin was before. I don't know. We're obviously terrible at the history that we're talking about here. Everything's just kind of iffy.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, otherwise, for the future, I would love to go somewhere in the neighborhood of like 50 years, and then somewhere like 1,000 years.
I want to go to a period of time where I don't have to talk about feminism anymore, because feminism is just a given and we're all actually equal. I don't know if that'll ever actually exist.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I think would be really interesting is to go far enough into the future that even with all of our records, considering especially that a lot of our records are digital, and that's really not a very long-term stable format.
Mm-hmm.
Go far enough into the future that a lot of our data is either unavailable or corrupted or whatever, so that they have to dig through and do archaeology and kind of piece together what our society was like, the same way that we do it, even with civilizations that had great records.
So the end of some sort of epoch.
Well, I mean, just, yeah. Part of, like, you know, for example,
Well, I mean, there has to be an end. There has to be an end to something.
Well, and I mean, I'm not necessarily, like, a distinct end, but yeah, far enough into the future that the continuity of our understanding of ourselves has lapsed, and so that they have to rediscover our time. And I would be really interested to find out what they say about our time.
You know, a really good question here is talking about disability and whether disability will be eradicated or not. Because, you know, there are a lot of people who would like to not have to deal with their disability at all, and then there are a lot of people whose disability is a result of, let's say, you know, some sort of genetics, as most disabilities are, but it's something that's very livable with, like being deaf or being blind or being mute, for example. All of those are disabilities that almost give you access to a different, not almost, they do. They give you access to a different culture. You know, there is a huge deaf community. There's a huge deaf culture. And so, of course, when you're talking about that kind of disability, lots of people don't want that kind of disability to be eradicated, whereas I'm all for chronic pain being eradicated forever.
Is it that they don't want the disability eradicated, or they don't want the culture and the community eradicated?
Well, I mean, can you have one without the other?
Yeah. That makes me think of how a lot of what we call disabilities are basically really severe versions of pro-adaptions.
Yeah, often.
Or just adaptations that are that are problematic in our current systems, but would not be considered as a disability if life was organized differently.
Yeah, that would be really awesome, actually, for it to be for it not to be problematic because we didn't treat it in a way that it was problematic because we had our system just kind of put together and functional.
Well, one that comes to mind is autism.
Yes.
So there are elements of autism, being able to focus on a task to the exclusion of other things, not getting distracted, et cetera, that could be beneficial if those were things that we really highly valued.
I saw a really interesting thread the other day that was talking about someone with autism and how they like to go to a specific coffee place and order their specific thing in a specific order all the time, and how that really frustrated, I can't remember if it was their partner or their parent or who it was that it frustrated, but the person was talking about how, really it comes down to exactly what you're talking about. It's that you value something different than me, because for me, if I went to this particular coffee shop and everything was in order all the time and I got to order it exactly the way that I wanted to, that would be awesome and it would make my life so much easier. And it's not that mine is weird or different, it's just that it's not something that you value the same way that I do.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting.
Huh. But then that also presupposes, to go back to the time travel thing, that in the future that we're still in bodies.
That's true. I would like to still be in a body. You wouldn't?
I don't think that I would necessarily like or not like to be. I think that there would be, potential benefits and drawbacks to different options. What kind of body to be in, what kind of sensory input you get.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's...
Well, I mean, you and I were talking about that also, about how just would that even be... What would that even feel like, and would we even value the same things? Because so much of what we value about our lives at this moment depends very much on our biological inputs and processes. And if we no longer have those same biological inputs and processes, do we lament those things? The